Zoom din?
Zoom and YouTube din.
Oo nga.
Pero yun yung in advance mo i-set up.
Gagawin mo, di ba?
Oo, hindi katulad yung actual. Nagawa ko naman na-customize ko kahapon.
Gagawin mo, di ba?
Ayan, live na sa YouTube. Pero hindi ko alam kung public to.
Gagawin mo, di ba? Baka may manood.
Na sa YouTube. Pero sorry, itong YouTube na to.
Gagawin mo, di ba? Baka may manood.
Ayan, sinilent ko na yung YouTube kasi nag-e-echo. May 20 minutes delay. Pero pa ulit-ulit kasi teka now I have to, I don't know if this is already public, but I will have to share screen sa para
ayos. Anyway, floor, di ba sabi mo 8:30? 8 ba? Parang 8:30 alam nung iba eh.
sa practice session.
Oo. Kasi nag-post si Floor eh, parang 8:30 eh.
Supposed to be 8:30 nga, yung rehearsal.
Oo, naghihintay kami ni Boss Jim eh. Kaya wala pa yung mga tao.
8:30 ba pinos mo? Hindi sana 8:30 magpapapasok na tayong mga tao kasi marami nang naghihintay niyan eh. Baka pag click natin ng open, more than 3,000 agad yung tao tapos ang tagal lang naghintay tapos hindi sila makapasok. Magalit yung iba. Siguro
mga 10 minutes before.
Kaya speaker na hindi naman na first time, wala naman yata. Ano lang, Floor, yung video yung pinadala ni Geoffrey, paki-play mo ngayon. Play natin, ha? Test natin ngayon. Sabi naka-stream na to sa ha?
Testingin lang natin yung kahit basta mag-play lang na may audio. Tapos yun na yun.
Sige. Stop share ko. Ready ka na, Floor?
Wait lang po.
Hi, Cesar.
Hello. I was silent because I was afraid that I was invading another conference.
No,
how are you guys?
We're good. We're still in practice mode. So
okay, good.
So do you want to test anything? Are you playing any video that needs to be tested?
Yes, actually, we still have about an hour to go, right?
Right.
Okay, good. So I'll just check my presentation here. I'll just open it and I'll share with you just to make sure that everything is okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
Just give me 1 second.
I have to stop share. Okay. We will be recording this and then it will also be streamed live on YouTube.
Perfect. Let me check my lighting here also. Okay. Yeah, I think this is a little bit better. Okay, let me try to share this with you. Can you see my presentation okay now?
Yes,
Yes.
you can see it.
Hi, Cesar. Morning. Or
Good,
yeah.
good. It's good night in here.
Evening.
Okay, so you guys can see my presentation. So I think we are pretty much ready to go.
Okay, good. Where are you
Yeah.
now? Which state are you in? What's the time?
So it's we'll start writing time, right? So I still have a couple minutes here to go to get a cup of coffee and maybe some water.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Okay, good.
we're waiting
Uh,
for others to test also there.
okay, good. I'll be back in a couple minutes then. I'll be ready to go.
Yes, just come. Yes,
See you
even
soon,
just before
guys.
9 now it's fine. Yeah.
Okay,
See
thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Boss Jim, um,
Ano?
sinong ipopromote mong host para ma-start mo yung isa sa kabila?
Na-start ko na. Kasi naano na ako eh. Yung Outlook yun eh. Ito UP. Kaway na siya ngayon. Nag-working na.
Okay. Naka-start na pala. So,
Pero pwede kong gawing host si Noel or ikaw.
Noel?
Pero kung ano, better kung kay Doc na kasi kung na-test ko na rin kasi yung YouTube sa kanya na din ano, para yung output mo yung URL.
Nag-iisip ako kung ililipat ko yung host, yung live streaming kaya maapektuhan.
Subukan
Kasi,
mo.
Hindi,
Ha?
most likely si host yung may hawak ng URL. So, better na hindi ako yung yung maging host. Co-host lang ako dapat. Otherwise, baka hindi makuha yung link na yun.
Okay.
Live na tayo sa
So,
sa YouTube. Later
So,
on
iiwan mo na lang, boss.
Ha?
Iiwan mo lang to naka-on.
Oo, iwan ko lang naka-on.
Okay. Sige. Kasi nakalagin din ako doon sa kabila eh. Kalagay, webinar will begin soon.
Kasi hindi pa ako nagpapasok doon. Teka, gawin na pala kitang dito sa kabila. Analyst.
Mag-start tayo ng 10 minutes to 9. Noel? Floor? Si Rhea online na dun sa kabila. Nasa chat room na siya. Alam na ba niya yung YouTube URL? Floor?
Yes po. Si Ray.
Alam na ni Rhea? Alam niya na?
Yes po.
Okay.
ROM, ang ginagamit mo sa kabila yung rom@up.edu.ph.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, na-promote ka, naging panelist ka na.
Ganon?
Panelist eh. Ha?
Pinomote mo?
Well, hindi diretsong promote using the Zoom but ninad kita dun sa page mismo ng anong tawag doon?
Sa dashboard?
Sa dashboard.
Ayan na.
Okay.
Ayan na, nakapasok na ako. Oo. Thank you.
So, alis ako dito muna. If you need anything from me, message me. Hindi ko out pero i-off ko na yung audio nito para ma-on ko na yung audio sa kabila kasi nandun na yung iba.
Basta pagka live na lang, connect na lang para makuha yung URL.
No?
Para malipat niyo pa yung URL.
Gustong start webinar, kaya mo nang gawin,
Oo, nakikita namin yan.
Nakikita nyo? Okay. Preferably, 8:30 nga sana natin ma-start kasi sa dami ng papasok, baka lampas na ng 3,000 by 8:30.
Kahit lang po, kahit 15 minutes before lang, na before the time. Okay na po yun. Kahit 10 minutes ka po, okay lang po yun.
Sige, ready naman na yung ano eh. Si Ariel lang hinihintay natin na mag-open. So,
Record to the cloud ko na rin ha, para is-splice nyo na lang later on yung mga recording, pati yung nasa YouTube.
madali naman yan.
Okay.
Floor,
Yes po.
pa-post naman nung ano, YouTube URL dun sa chat. Sa panelist lang.
Sandali lang po.
Thank you.
Recorded na agad.
Live na tayo sa YouTube.
Kala ko magte-testing pa. Okay.
Okay lang, mag-test ka, sir. Live na tayo sa YouTube.
Kala ko magte-testing pa.
Test.
Testing. Audio.
in garages, school.
So I've been running every day for more than a year now as part of the Run 365 BH crew. Technology has helped me monitor my pace, my heart rate, my distance, and even the speed that I'm doing while I'm running. I'm ready to run the world.
Technology has tremendously shaped games and how we play games over the years. My first was a family computer, and then I went to PlayStation, then PlayStation 3, and then I have PC games. I even was a beta tester for the first MMORPG here in the Philippines. I am ready to be a game changer.
Considering the traffic congestions these days, driving to and from work could really take so much of my time. That's why I'm thankful for apps like Grace. These apps help me navigate the metro. I'm ready to outsmart traffic.
Music is my stress reliever. Recently, I just learned how to play the ukulele through online videos, and it's very convenient how I can just search for chords of music that I want to learn online. With technology, I am ready to learn new music.
Being in style gives me confidence. It's great how I can find the latest trends with a simple click of a button. With access to my favorite fashion pics at the palm of my hand, I'm ready for the runway.
1, 2, 3. This is easy for me. Ta-da! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is this 9? I'm ready for big school.
In garages, schoolrooms, small towns and cities, around campfires, in deserts, startups and universities, people are connected and changing our reality. Rather than top-down control, it's open collaboration. Rather than power for the few, it's spread amongst many. And although nobody's certain how the future will unfold, why not help write it and have a say in how it's told?
So I've been running every day for more than a year now as part of the Run 365 BH crew. Technology has helped me monitor my pace, my heart rate, my distance, and even the speed that I'm doing while I'm running. I'm ready to run the world.
Technology has tremendously shaped games and how we play games over the years. My first was a family computer, and then I went to PlayStation, then PlayStation 3, and then I have PC games. I even was a beta tester for the first MMORPG here in the Philippines. I am ready to be a game changer.
Considering the traffic congestions these days, driving to and from work could really take so much of my time. That's why I'm thankful for apps like Grace. These apps help me navigate the metro. I'm ready to outsmart traffic.
Music is my stress reliever. Recently, I just learned how to play the ukulele through online videos, and it's very convenient how I can just search for chords of music that I want to learn online. With technology, I am ready to learn new music.
Being in style gives me confidence. It's great how I can find the latest trends with a simple click of a button. With access to my favorite fashion picks at the palm of my hand, I'm ready for the runway.
1, 2, 3. This is easy for me. Ta-da! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is this 9? Yay! I'm ready for big school.
In garages, schoolrooms, small towns and cities, around campfires in deserts, startups and universities, people are connected and changing our reality. Rather than top-down control, it's open collaboration. Rather than power for the few, it's spread amongst many. And although nobody's certain how the future will unfold, why not help write it and have a say in how it's told?
morning. Welcome to the 18th Youth Congress on Information Technology, known as the Y4iT 2020, and the first ever virtual Y4iT Congress. As in the past 17 years, while we miss the excitement of the live audience participation, the 3 days virtual Congress, the 3 Saturdays, today, November 21, December 5, December 12, are packed with informative presentations and discussions on the various fields of information technology, which we are sure you, the participants, will gain new knowledge from. Even with the pandemic that forces us to change how we do things, technology continues to play an important part and even becomes more relevant in our daily lives. As students and IT professionals and would-be IT professionals, we try to continue pursuing the realization of our dream careers, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic and the fourth industrial revolution that is happening now. For today, discussions will revolve around emerging technologies, free and open source operating systems such as Linux, Internet of Things that plays a vital role in the current global health, public health emergency, security that has become an increasing concern as most people are now online, and of course, being ready for the fourth industrial revolution. We hope you will learn a lot today, and in the next 2 consecutive sessions, the next 2 Saturdays, again, on behalf of the organizers, the UP System IT Foundation, the UP Information Technology Development Center, the UP Diliman Department of Computer Science, and the University of the Philippine System, we welcome you to the 18th Youth Congress on Information Technology, to our around 5,000 participants in Zoom and YouTube all over the Philippines. Thank you for attending. Thank you also to our major sponsor, the Linux Professional Institute.
Thank you very much, Professor Bitan. Um, let's move forward and welcome Mr. Cesar Broad from the Linux Professional Institute. Cesar?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear and see me well? Can you please confirm if you are hearing me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect. It's a pleasure to be here in Y4iT. I am amazed by the amount of people that are joining the event. Last time I looked, there was more than 1,400 people. So I must tell you that by now, this is the event where I'm talking to the biggest audience since the pandemic started. So congratulations to you to gather all of these people together in this event. I hope that at the end of my presentation, I'll get a lot of questions from you. So just for you to give more time to ask me questions, I will start the presentation right away by sharing my screen. And I will ask the organizers if you do have if you do need to interrupt me at any time, please do so. So let me share my screen with you. Just give me 1 second here to get organized. View, present, and now share screen. Okay, one little second. Okay, good. Can you guys see my screen well?
Yes.
Okay, Perfect. Well, it's great to talk to. I'm assuming there's a lot of young people in here, and it's great to tell you about this magical world of technology that we are all into this world right now. Even the ones that are not actually working directly with technology, we are all of us living in the world of technology. So let me move on with my presentation. We tend to divide, when we are studying sciences, we tend to divide the sciences to the exact sciences, being mathematics, physics, chemistry, and the human sciences, philosophy, sociology, history, and usually the information technologies, they are more in the hidden, in the occult sciences. Uh, at least this is what a lot of people say, because you don't know exactly what might happen in information and communication technologies. And as we are talking about hidden and occult sciences, I would like to make a parallel between the story of Harry Potter, the story of someone that a lot of you must know, which is Linus Torvalds, but you will probably be able to see a lot of parallels with your own story in the ICT world. So here you go. This is in your right is Linus Torvalds. In the left is John Mad Dog Hall. John Mad Dog Hall is today the chairman of the Linux Professional Institute, the chairman of our board. And here we are together, I believe this was in 2003 and or 2004 in Oakland, in California. So I like to consider John Mad Dog Hall as the Dumbledore of all of the ICT wizard bunch. So if we think about Harry Potter, Harry Potter was born in 1980. In 1981, he became an orphan. And in 1985, he was enrolled in a Muggle school, a school for regular people. And only in September 1991, he joined Hogwarts, the school of wizardry. And there he started to do what I like to call some mob programming with Hermione and Ron. And in Linus Torvalds' life, I like to think that this was the moment where he wrote the code Sarah is the best in a computer that was owned by his grandfather. The only thing that the code that Linus Torvalds wrote at the time was something that would write Sarah is the best in the screen, and Sarah being the sister of Linus Torvalds. If we move on, in October 1994, it was when Harry Potter, 13 years old, participated in the Tournament of the Three Magics. And Albus Dumbledore would introduce this tournament by saying, "Eternal glory, this is what awaits the student who wins the Three Wizard Tournament. But for that, he will have to survive in three tasks, three extremely dangerous tasks." And if you listen to the stories of everyone that is working for quite a long time in the ICT industry, they will all tell you that they had to face some extremely dangerous tests also. So in November 1995, this was when Harry Potter was around 14 to 15 years old, he joined in 1995 the Dumbledore's Army. So this is the equivalent of someone having its first project at GitHub. In 1996, in June, he got the ordinary wizarding level, which is the equivalent of someone getting the Linux Essential certification. And in September, he started to get lessons from Dumbledore, which I would think is the equivalent of Linus Torvalds' first meeting with Mad Dog. I don't know if you guys know about it, but in 1994, this was the time when John Mad Dog Hall gave Linus Torvalds a 64-bit machine, an alpha processor, machine from the Digital Equipment Corporation. And this was the first time that Linux was ported outside the original 386 architecture. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slides. But this initiative by John Mad Dog Hall was what made today possible for us to have Linux running even in our watches, cell phones, cars, spaceships, everything. So only when Harry Potter was around 26 and then up to 39 years old was when he was able to be the chief of something. In 2007, he was the head of the Hour Department, and in 2020, the head of the Magic Police Department. So it really took a lot of time for Harry Potter to learn his magic and to have some influential jobs. So it does take time for us that are in this magical world of technology also to advance in our career. So we need to study a lot, and we also need to be persistent and be patient. And some people, let me just get a sip of water in here. A lot of people say that it's very difficult in the ICT world to know what you should study to be up to date in this market, because nobody can predict the future. But if we pay attention to what is around us, to what is going on, we are actually able to get a glimpse of the future. So this is just a small example, and don't worry, this whole presentation, all of these slides will be available for you. So you'll be able to follow some links that I'm providing you here and read with more time some of the things that I'm presenting to you here in this 1 hour, a little less of an hour of presentation, because I want to give you time to ask me questions. So this guy, Dave Garrow. Dave Garrow is a sci-fi writer, and in 1999, he wrote this small article where he pretty much told what we would have in our pockets. He called a PITA, a personal information and telecommunications agent, which is basically a smartphone. And this was in 1999. So if we do take a look, if we do pay attention to what is going on around us, we can, I will not say predict the future, but be more ready for the things that are coming on in our careers. So just this is a slide that I took from an advertisement here in Brazil, where basically it will tell you that you can learn ICT in a week. You will not do that. You see some advertised like learn data science in a weekend, learn artificial intelligence in 1 week or 2 weeks. This never happens. I like this example here from a guy named John Washam. John Washam wanted to start working for Google. So he put together a study plan, which is here in this GitHub page, and you have this slide in here, so no need to worry about copying this URL right now. But here he told his whole story, how he studied full-time for 8 months for a Google interview. He was not hired by Google, but he got hired as a software development engineer at Amazon. And he got very happy. And a lot of people follows his study guide to get jobs not only at Google, at Amazon, but also in places like SpaceX. So let's, you guys probably remember the rule of 3. So if John had 10 hours a day and he studied 8 months, if you have 5 hours a day, you have to study 16 months. If you have X hours a day, the less hours you have to study more months. And here is the formula that you need to know how much time you need to study, depending on how many hours per day you have. And to make your life easier, I created this URL in here, which is a Google spreadsheet. It's the study time calculator. So if you go to this spreadsheet right now, you'll see a place where you can input the time of the amount of hours a day you have to study, and then you see how much time in months and years you need to study to get your dream job. This doesn't mean that you don't need to get another intermediate job. Of course, as you move up, as you move on with your studies, the more ready you will be to get a job that will be closer and closer to the job that you want. A lot of people ask me, should I learn about free technologies? And you guys know I work for the Linux Professional Institute. And if you didn't know, now you know. So, of course, I will tell you, you should learn about free technologies. But let's think a little bit about it. Uh, why should we use free software? Well, it's easy to build on what already exists. If you look into GitHub, GitLab, and you think that, well, I have an idea, I want to develop this kind of thing. If you do a small research on GitHub or GitLab, or SourceForge, or Savannah, or other free and open source software repositories that are in the world, you see that someone probably has built some of the things that you will need on your project, or is working on a very similar project of the one that's close to the one that you are trying to develop. So you can join a project that has already started. So it's with free software, it's really easy to build on top of what already exists. It's important more and more to talk about security. Now we have Internet of Things devices everywhere, and most of them are running free and open source software. And why is that? Because problems happens. Everything will face a problem. Software will have bugs. But if the software is open, we have more people looking into the software and being able to fix it. Eric Raymond wrote in his study, The Cathedral in the Bazaar, what he called the Linus law. Given enough eyes, all bugs are shallow, meaning if there's a lot of people looking at, the bugs will surface and people will be able to fix it. It's easy to access. Just download, make sure the license is a free software license, so you'll be able to study the code, copy, and redistribute. It's all over the internet in the free software repository. So it's very easy to get access to free and open source software. It's very easy to adapt. In Asia, where we are having this event right now, you have several languages and in several different countries, and you have LibreOffice available in all of the languages. And this is possible because the source code is available for every region. So people that speak Filipino, that speak Malay, that speak Japanese, Chinese, they all can adapt the software not only for their language, but for the way they write, from left to right, from top to bottom, from bottom to up. And you can do that because the software is open. One example that I'm giving here, it's called PhotoGIMP. There's a lot of people that work in the proprietary world with images, with photographs, and they use Photoshop to touch up their photos. GIMP is the software that we use in the open source world to touch up pictures, and PhotoGIMP is GIMP with an interface that looks a lot like Photoshop. So it makes easier for people who knows Photoshop to jump into GIMP without the need of learning GIMP the way it is, but being able to do everything that GIMP does using a Photoshop-like interface. It adheres to standards. If we think about the internet it's only possible because a lot of people agreed with standards. How hosts should be named, how IP addresses should work, how do we translate IP addresses using domain name services into host names, and a lot of things like that. So Linux was born inside the internet. Unix started with the internet. So when we think about standards, Linux, free and open source software adhere to standards. And as things adhere to standards, it makes easier for us to collaborate within this world. And if this is not enough to convince you, the whole world uses free software and open technologies. From home appliances like your vacuum cleaner, your blender, smart refrigerators, smart TVs, from everything that is it's in the Internet of Things, or all things on the Internet, like the I just mentioned your vacuum cleaner, like it probably has an ESP86 chip in it, which run Linux and Lua language interpreter. If we think about artificial intelligence, things like Python libraries such as TensorFlow and things like that, all of that is free and open source software, and a lot of this development is based on Linux. From embedded devices that you see in your car to the cloud, from Google to Microsoft. The Microsoft cloud is more than 70% Linux. And SpaceX, the ships, the spaceships that are going to Mars, they run on Linux. And this is a tweet that I copied from Elon Musk. Elon Musk, you guys probably know, is the owner of SpaceX, Tesla, the Boring Company, and several other enterprises. And he replies directly, telling someone that asked the question about the Linux kernel. And he says that the Linux kernel update was harder than anticipated, but it get a giant improvement. So if the owner, the CEO of a company such as SpaceX is concerned about free and open source software, you also should be. Now, a lot of people, when I mentioned that I work for LPI, I saw that Jolly Villavisa is also here in the panel. I didn't see Grace, but Grace that also worked for the Asia Pacific region, she's probably here also. We all work for the Linux Professional Institute. And people think that the Linux Professional Institute is a company that sells certification. And we are very proud when we hear that. This means that the certifications that we provide are very good. But actually, our mission is to promote the use of free and open source technologies by supporting the people who work with them, by providing an education and a career path for people that are in this ecosystem. And we actually like to expand our mission and say that we are actually promoting the use and adoption of all kinds of free knowledge. We are a non-profit organization founded in Canada in 1999, so we are more than 21 years old right now. We have a very small team. We are about 50 executives, and we are present all over the world thanks to our partners and our volunteers. We are independent from any industry vendor of Linux, distributions of Linux, and other free and open source software industries. We like to be neutral towards vendors and distributions. And this is one of the reasons that all vendors and distributions, they actually recognize us as a very good, as the standard certification in the market. We have three major tracks of certifications. We have the Essentials track. Today we have available the Linux Essentials exam. It's an exam that was required by the Linux Professional Institute for the industry. The industry asked us to have a certification that was simpler than the LPIC1, which is the Linux System Administrator, because they wanted to hire people that already had the Linux Essentials and then work inside their human resources program to get people inside their companies following our certification track. We actually developed a program called the Hiring Partner Program to help enterprises do this kind of thing. And the enterprises decide to do this kind of thing because it was very difficult to keep someone that had a Linux certification because other companies would go there and hire them. So they started these programs to have people completing their certification path inside the company so they would retain knowledge, retain people, retain brains within the company. So in the Linux professional track, we have the Linux administrator, the Linux engineer, where you basically administer your Linux servers within within a network. Then we have the special certifications on security, mixed environment, and virtualization. And in the question and answers, we can tell you more about that. And also you can always call Jolly and Grace and know more about our certifications in the Asia Pacific region. We have the Open Technology track, which is basically the BSD specialist for those who are already in this Unix Linux system. The Berkeley software distribution has another Unix-like operating system, which is the BSD. They have their own certification, but as LPI certification was very good, they decided to leave for us to certify their professionals. We have the DevOps Tools Engineer certification for people that are in the DevOps area and want and need to know what are the free software tools using in DevOps. And we will be releasing next year the BOSS specialist, the Business of Open Source specialist, which is someone that is the CTO, the CIO of a company that needs to know how to buy free and open source software related services and solutions, and we need to know about licensing also. Well, let's move a little further. We are, as I told you before, we are present all over the world. We have around 250,000 people certified, more than 800 exams delivered. So 250,000 people certified, more than 800 exams delivered. Our exams are not that easy, but we now know that if someone takes the Linux Essential certifications, the odds that they will pass in the LPIC1 certification get higher. So it's easier for you to move up in your certification path if you start from the basis. Also, a lot of people ask me if they should know how to program. Again, simple answer, yes. Even if you are working on system administration, if you are going to be a DevOps professional, you will need to know how to automate tasks. And you automate your tasks using shell scripting, using the Python language or other languages, but you will need to know how to program. Today, someone that's considered a complete ICT professional is someone that knows how to handle a system from what is called from concept to cache. From the moment you are thinking of a solution until the moment that you make this solution available to a user. So you need to know how to do system analysis, to understand what your customer, what your user wants. You need to know how to program. You need to know how to make your program work in a server environment or in a cloud environment. You need to know how to automate the delivery process, and you need to know how to do quality assurance when your solution gets into your customers. So it is important that you know how to program. Lots of big companies are, they have processes where they teach people that are in administrative or other kinds of jobs to transition their jobs into programming jobs. So here is just one example from Disney. Disney started this program in 2018, and it was geared into two women working in administration tasks, and they migrated hundreds of women from administrative tasks to programming tasks. So it is really important for you to learn how to program. And how should you start? Well, first start learning programming logic. There's a lot of resources. There are regular classes in your university. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a lot of independent trainers that will train you on programming logic. And I think, in my opinion, it's a really important thing for you to learn. As you learn programming logic, even as you learn how to program using a piece of paper, it will make it easier for you to learn a programming language and migrate from one programming language to another programming language. But then choose a programming language. If you like a project and you want to join a project, and this project already uses a programming language, start to learn this specific programming language. And if you do not know how to speak English, use the same time to learn English. Uh, we can say a lot about the English language, the English domination, but the truth is, everything in technology, you have the first source of knowledge in English. So it is important for you to learn English. As you start programming with a modern uh, integrated development environment. If you haven't choose one, I recommend you to take a look at the Jupyter Notebook. There are several others, but the Jupyter Notebook has the advantage of supporting several languages and have a very big community that will be able to help you on moving forward with this project. And I sort of told you about that before. Choose a project that appeals to you. Take a look on GitHub, GitLab, SourceForge. Uh, Look for projects that need help, where sometimes you don't even need to start programming, but you can start testing the project. You can start translating and writing documentation. And as you get more familiar with the project, then you can start contributing with the code. And very important, especially if you are a student and you are entering the market, tell everyone what you are doing. Build your portfolio. Today, the ones that are going to hire you to work in a company or to develop a part of a project, they will not ask you for your resume. They will look into your LinkedIn page, and they will ask you to show your code. So it is important for you to contribute to projects, to build your portfolio in a shared repository. As early as possible, start building your portfolio. Well, I told you this is the URL for the Jupyter Notebook, so take a look at that. Let me check how much time do I have. I think I'm quite okay with my time. So here are other things, other links that I recommend you to take a look. I'm mentioning GitHub in here because it's a good place for you to start. Of course, there are several other repositories for you. And I do think I wanted to give you some time to ask me questions. And I went quite fast. So here's our addresses. In the social networks, I'm Cesar Broad in all of them. This is my email address. Here you also have the email of Johnny Villavisa that works for the Asia Pacific region, and he will gladly answer your questions. Do remember, we are very few people inside LPI, and we will answer all of your questions. Sometimes it takes a long time to answer your question. Just forward your questions to us again, so it will bump on top of our inbox, and we'll make sure that your question will be answered. Well, guys, I'm now available for you. Ask me any questions you want. I probably ran a little bit too fast, which I think is good because now you have more time to ask me questions. I'll gladly also go back to some slides if you want to show you some more different things. So I'm here with you. And okay, and Grace is here too.
All right.
Grace
Hello.
and
Hello,
John.
Cesar.
Hello.
Yes. There's a question. Okay, maybe we're gonna start with question and answer already. A question from the participants would be, which is more secure, free software versus premium software?
Yes. Free software, as by definition, free software has to respect what we call the four freedoms. You are free to execute the program, which is nothing that unusual. You can do that with all kinds of programs, but you are also free to study the program. So you need to, in order to study the program, to be able to have access to the source code. So this is this is very important. If we are talking about free software, you need to have access to the source code. You need to know exactly how this program was created, how to compile it, and how to place it in a server or in a cloud or wherever you want to do that. You are free to modify this software. So as you have access to the source code, you can modify the source code. You can adapt the source code for your needs. If you are working for a company, you can even charge that company some money to adapt the source code in a way that this company will be able to better use the source code. And the fourth freedom, you are free to redistribute the modified version of that free software. And as you distribute this modified version, the version that you are distributing also needs to follow these four freedoms. When we are talking about freemium, usually freemium software is a software that sometimes will give access to the source code, sometimes it will not. It will give you a limited set of functionalities for you to use, or a limited time where you can use the software without paying. But as you need to use extra features, or as you need to use the software for a longer period of time, you need to pay for that. Otherwise, you will not have access to the features. You will no longer have access to the source code and things like that. Freemium software, usually you also have, even regarding the source code, you have limited access to the source code. It is a business model, of course, but it's not completely free software. And again, it is, when I say it is a business model, I want to stress that there is a lot of business models based uniquely on free and open source software. And there are several of them. LPI, for instance, use as the customer relationship management a software called Odoo. Odoo is free software. It is free of charge and has a huge community of people that build modules for Odoo, that provide paid support for Odoo, paid customization for Odoo. If you think about companies like Red Hat, Canonical, and SUSE, they provide large companies guarantees that their Linux installation will work 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, non-stop. And in order to do that, they charge for their services. So you can charge for your work on top of free software. Freemium, again, is not free software. It's just limited software that you can use for free for a limited period of time, or with a limited set of functionalities. I hope I have answered your question.
All right. There are several questions. Okay, thank you for the answer. There are several questions related to programming languages. A couple of which is one, what is the best programming language for beginners? Or which programming language is easy to use? And what is actually the most in-demand language, perhaps, of today's job offer? Is really Linux one of the prerequisites for a job seeker? Yeah, that's it.
This is a very good question. And actually, yesterday I was in a panel with another LPI colleague, Y4iT, and we get the same questions. We were actually asked to provide our top 10 languages. I like to refer to our chairman of the board, John Mad Dog Hall, who says that, and I agree with him, that the most important programming language that you should learn is shell scripting, because shell scripting is available in all of Linux distributions, is available on Mac OS, and now starting with Windows 10 is available on Windows 10 also. you use shell scripting to automate all of the system administrative tasks. But it's a very powerful language. You can actually do anything with shell scripting. And it's a general purpose language that will serve you for your whole life. Once said that, it will depend very much on the field that you want to work on. For instance, if you want to work with artificial intelligence and data sciences, I recommend you to learn Python. Python is a very widely used language in this field. There are several libraries for artificial intelligence and data sciences that are free software, and they are readily available for the Python language. If you are going to work in the Internet of Things, then you should learn the C programming language and the Lua programming language. A lot of Internet of Things devices, they work in very small processors where you have a very small footprint, so you need to learn how to program in lower level languages. And one interesting thing is that the Internet of Things is a booming thing in the industry. If you want to get an international job, the C programming language is still a must. It's not a language that's the easier language to learn. Python is a lot easier. The shell scripting is a lot easier. So C is more difficult, but it will give you more opportunities if you are going to work with Internet of Things and embedded systems. My youngest daughter, she is here with me right now because we are all in family together, but she's moving to the Netherlands next week. And she's doing that because she knows how to program in C, and she also knows how to program in assembler language, which is even lower level. So it really depends on what you are going to work on. Another field that is ever growing on, like now that we are at our places and a lot of commerces, they are going into the internet, even when we are talking about small villages. I live in a very small city in the south of Brazil, and a lot of regular commerces, they are regular small markets, they are starting to sell stuff into the internet. And so it's important for people to know content management systems like WordPress, Drupal, and electronic commerce plugins such as WooCommerce. And all of those systems are based on PHP. So if you are getting into the web development field, it's important for you to learn PHP, to learn JavaScript, and also JavaScript frameworks and PHP frameworks also. So it really depends very much on where you are going to, what is the language that it will be better for you to learn. So this is why I recommend, if you haven't started with any programming language yet, take at least a couple weeks of looking into pure programming logic. If you don't even know how to start, search YouTube for programming logic tutorials, and then you know the basic of programming logic. You program in your own speaking language, and then you jump into a programming language with a better basis for you to learn a programming language. I talk too much, right?
All right. I think there's another question. Is Linux OS now a plug and play OS like the Microsoft? I've been an avid user of like Fedora, Ubuntu, and Debian. I can see that Linux is great, but one great advantage of Microsoft against Linux is that Microsoft is a plug and play OS.
It's more and more a plug and play OS. The only problem that we still have with Linux is that some hardware providers, they only release the binary drivers. So it's sometimes it's difficult to reverse engineer those drivers into the driver sessions in the Linux kernel. But I would say that like all of the modern computers today, they are plug and play with the newest versions of the kernel Linux. It's been quite a long time for me that I haven't bought a device that I was not able to plug into my Linux system and it would start working right away. Since the kernel 2.0 with the pluggable modules on the kernel, Linux became more and more plug and play. So I would say now that devices that are not plug and play for Linux are an exception. And even today, like some devices, they are not exactly plug and play for Windows. You need some work to have some of the most modern devices working on other operating systems also. So my answer to that is that today is Linux is as plug and play as other operating systems such as Windows and Mac OS.
All right. So thank you for that answer. Okay, this is usually a popular question. Which distribution of Linux a beginner programmer should get? And is it better than Windows?
Well, I would tell you that the better distribution for you to start is the distribution that most of your colleagues are using, because then you get support from them when you have some doubts. Of course, the Ubuntu distribution is the most popular one, so it's easier for you to go into the internet, to go into sites such as Stack Overflow, and get help on using the Ubuntu system. The Ubuntu has several variants today. I am personally using a Ubuntu modified version called Pop! OS. Linux Mint is extremely popular. So I would stick, if you were starting, with Ubuntu or a Ubuntu-based distribution. Of course, there are some specialized distributions. Like one of the things that I like to do when I go into install fests and people show up with very old machines, then I like to use distributions that are geared to older machines, such as Puppy OS, Light OS, Linux Lite, things like that, like those that are more geared to machines that have lower resources. But if you are using a modern desktop or a modern notebook, and this is the first time that you are using Linux, I would go for Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or Pop! OS. This would be my recommendation.
Right. Question is here is very specific. What open source software is good for 3D animation? Maybe there are updates right now about the latest FOSS on 3D animation.
Yeah, I am not too deep into graphics and 3D animation, but I do know a lot of people in there is the CGraph community, the Open Graph community, and what I'm seeing the software that is most popular in the free and open source software for 3D animation, where you can see several movies that have been created with this software is Blender. So Blender is still the most popular software for 3D animation in the free software world. And of course, it does not only runs on Linux, but it also runs on Windows and Mac OS. So even if you are not using Linux yet, you can start using free software for the Blender, the software for 3D animation in your own platform of choice.
Thank you. Another question. How does Linux-based distributions generate revenue or sales, given that it is open source, or how do contributors earn from it?
Well, I myself, I believe not only from Linux, but from all sorts of free and open source software since 1997. So there are several business models on top of free and open source software. And Linux is only one example of free and open source software. And I would say that the only difference between proprietary models and free software models is that on proprietary models, you have to pay for licenses, and for free and open source software, you do not need to pay for licenses. You pay for services in both cases. Like I mentioned the example of big Linux distributions such as Canonical, SUSE, Red Hat. All of them, they have their free software, truly free software, free as in freedom and free as in free beer distributions of Linux, but they charge big banks and security companies a lot of money to support these distributions into these big banks and financial institutions, stock exchanges, because those companies, they need their free software to be running all the time. So they pay for someone to maintain that software for them. Uh, I'll give you one example based in my own story. In 2003, I'll jump to the chase a little bit, but in 2003, we created a free software development and integration cooperative called Solis, which exists until today. And the most important software of this cooperative until today is an academic administration software. We developed for one university, and as other universities started to come up and see what we are doing, they got interested in this software, and they started hiring us to provide services. So the cooperative is now more than 20, well, almost 20 years old right now. It has customers all over Brazil. The software is open source, but the truth is that you cannot just go and download an academic system and start working to an university. There's a lot of knowledge for you to start to work in this system. There's a lot of consulting services on top of these systems. So today, I would say that what Solis provides is consulting services for academic administration. And on the side, there is a free software that they install on top of their consulting services. So everything that you can think of, like if you can think of an example of a proprietary model, just take away the paying for licensing part, and you can create an equivalent free software model. And today, if you think about what is going on with the cloud, like the Microsoft cloud runs a lot of Linux machines. Because people today, nobody is buying packages of software anymore. They are buying for solutions that they use in the cloud. So they rent space in the cloud, and they rent solutions for their problems, and these solutions are based in the cloud. So it really does not make any sense today for you to sell software licenses. We have migrated into a world that is based on software as a service. You sell services on top of software. And if you don't need to pay for the licenses, you can charge less for your services, and you can get more customers because you're charging less for your services.
All right, thank you for that one. Right now we have around 2,400 attendees on our Zoom, and we also have viewers on our YouTube. There's a question on YouTube. What are the differences between the terminal and command prompt, and what are the advantages and disadvantages between them?
I'm sorry, I didn't get what is the. Let me see if I can see this question here on YouTube. But can you repeat that for me, please?
The question is, what are the differences between the terminal and command prompt, and what are the advantages and disadvantages between the two? I think, yeah, you can just interpret that one.
Yeah, I understand that probably the person that asked these questions is asking about the command prompt in a Windows machine and the terminal in the Linux. There is a big difference. It's even difficult to enumerate all of the difference. But a command prompt, as the name say, is a prompt for you to give commands to the operating system, which is actually behind this command prompt. So you have the Windows systems, you have the command prompt for the Windows system. When you are talking about the terminal and we are talking about the shell is actually the layer that is between you and the kernel of the operating system. So it gives you a lot more power to do that, to work with the operating system. Also, there are several layers of security. A command prompt will give you direct access to the operating system. In a shell, it will give your user access to the kernel of the operating system, meaning that if you are not a super user, there is a limited amount of things that you can do that you can mess up your user area, but you cannot mess up with the whole operating system, which is something that you can very easily do with the command prompt. You can think of the shell as a very sophisticated interface to everything that you can have access in your machine. Like you can use your shell, for instance, to get direct access to a process that is running in your system and change the priorities of this process that is running in your system. You can kill directly that process if you have the authority to do so. And you can also write, using the shell scripting language, some very sophisticated programs to automate tasks. If you are very familiar with the command prompt, you can use the batch files that can sort of allow you to do the same kind of thing, but it with a limited amount of logic that you can do. If you are working with the shell and the shell scripting, you have a very powerful programming language that you can call directly from that shell. It's so that the command prompt is so less powerful than the shell, which people usually most commonly call the Linux terminal. But the command prompt is so less powerful that Microsoft actually has a partnership today with Canonical, which is the one that produces the Ubuntu Linux distribution. And you now have the Windows subsystem for Linux. And you are now able to have the bash shell, the terminal, on Windows. So now you can have a lot more power using the regular Linux terminal on Windows. So a short answer would be the terminal, the shell, is a lot more powerful than the command prompt. The shell is closer to the kernel of the operating system than the command prompt is.
All right, I think we still have room for one more question. And I'll just check. I think this one is a very, very specific one, but feel free to address it. Participant just want to know your opinion about the implementation of System D in major Linux distros nowadays, like Devented or etc. Do you think it really helps in the standardization of Linux? Do you think it really violates the Unix philosophy? Thank you.
Oh wow, that's a very, very good question. So regarding the Unix philosophy, and I think the person that asked this question is talking about that we should have very small specialized programs doing one thing very well, and then be able to communicate with other programs that will do another thing very well. And we will combine all of the small specialized programs in a system-wide solution. System D is quite big. System D is responsible to do a lot of things, from the initialization to the control of the several processes that are running in the Linux, Unix system. It's very complex. so I would say that yes, it hurts the Linux philosophy. At the same time, systems are getting more and more complex. And if you think about now that we have, especially we deploy machines in the format of containers. And when we deploy a container, we need to create exact images of these containers to deploy in several kind of cloud providers. The complexity of the operating system, the complexity is getting bigger and bigger. And there is a compromise where you can you need to consider what makes things more portable, what makes systems perform better, and if you should stick to the philosophy or not. For the first time that I got in touch with Linux, it was in the end of 1992, beginning of 1993, when I needed a Unix operating system to run in my laptop. It was not a notebook, it was really a laptop. It was a very heavy portable computer. And I asked my boss to buy for me a Unix distribution. It was SEO Unix at the time. It costed here in Brazil, 1992, 1993, $5,000. It was extremely expensive for us. And I wanted to have a Unix system because my daughter, the one that I mentioned before, the one that is moving to Netherlands, she was just born. So I wanted to spend more time at home. So I needed to have a Unix system to do troubleshooting, pre-install of systems that I needed to install in my customers. So my boss did not buy that Unix for me. So as we already had a connection with our headquarters in California, I was living in São Paulo in Brazil at that time, and we have a 64 kbps connection with the United States in California, where we were able to do voice and data. So imagine, today we could not live with a 64 kbps connection. But within this connection, using TCP/IP, I was able to telnet, emulate a terminal into the University of California in Berkeley, and I got to know the Usenet news, and I got to know this forum called CompOS Minix. And I knew Minix from a book that I read from Professor Andrew Tannenbaum on operating systems. Minix is another Unix flavor. I tried to install Minix in my computer and I was not able to. So while I was looking into the forums, I read this whole discussion between Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, and Professor Andrew Tannenbaum, the creator of Minix. And Professor Andrew Tannenbaum believed that we should stick to the Unix philosophy, even considering the kernel of the operating system. So he believed in a microkernel. So the kernel would be minimal, and everything should be small programs in the user space. Even programs that would communicate to the keyboard, to the screen, to other drivers, and things like that. I'm simplifying the story a little bit. And Linus Torvalds was defending that we should have a bigger kernel with modular device drivers included in that. The file system should be part of the kernel. And when you compile the kernel, everything should be part of this bigger kernel. So the Linux kernel itself hurts the Unix philosophy. But today, do you hear more about Linux or do you hear more about Linux? So Linux won due to the fact that in terms of using the hardware architecture available of that time and still available today, it worked better. Although it was a very big kernel and it's still a very big kernel. The Free Software Foundation took the microkernel approach, and they still have not released a working version of their kernel, which is the HERT. So aside of that, like I'm not in favor of big kernel or microkernels. I think both have their points, but in terms of market adoption, the bigger kernel, the Linux kernel, was adopted, and even the kernel that you use in your cell phone is a modified Linux kernel. So it works everywhere. Systemd. Systemd is a new thing. initd is a more is an older and stable thing that will coexist with systemd for a very long time. By now, my bet would be that systemd will be the standard, and it hurts the Unix philosophy. So sometimes I think we should try to stick to the philosophy the most we can, but sometimes we need to recognize that the real world doesn't work exactly as we expect in terms of the philosophy that we initiated creating Unix in the 70s. So we should be more open to changes like that, and at least allow systemd to be used and see how is it going to evolve. And if at some point in time, like there's a couple of years ago, we were not hearing too much about RISC processors anymore. Now we are hearing about RISC processors again, even in very small machines that are alternatives to the Raspberry Pi. So maybe as we have more RISC processors again, as we have more operating systems running on things like FPGAs, and I know I'm probably going too deep into technical details right now, but we still will see a lot of things evolving. But today, I think, considering what we have in terms of hardware for the cloud, for the Internet of Things, for cell phones, we'll stick with the Linux kernel and its derivatives. And systemd, I believe it's going to be the winner, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, unless someone else comes with a very nice and brighter idea.
All right, thank you so much for that answer. Okay, so again, like Mr. Ramon from the Linux Professional Institute, and we look forward again to LPI maybe in the next sessions. I mean, in the following month. All right, thank you so much again.
Thank you very, very much. And for us in LPI, it's a really, really big pleasure to be here with you and talking to this beautiful and very big audience. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Now, allow me to introduce the next speaker. Our next speaker is currently the director of the UP Information and Technology Development Center and executive director of the UP System Information Technology Foundation. He has more than 20 years of experience and expertise in the fields of IT management, operation systems planning and implementation, and business engineering. He served as Chief Information Officer of a private organization with diverse business interests for 9 years and served as IT consultant in various private and government institutions. Let us all welcome Professor Paulo Paje.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you today because of this event. And we are all here in the Youth Congress on IT, the Y4iT 2020. And it's good to know that COVID or non-COVID, this event is being pushed through by the organizers. Thank you for inviting me here. So please allow me to share my PowerPoint slide because for today, I'm going to share with you the emerging technologies. So in preparation for the other talks today, it is good that you will have an understanding of the trajectory, the direction with regards to technologies. So I hope that later today, you will be able to ask questions if there are like, queries or things that puzzles your mind. So I'm happy and will be glad to answer those questions. So before we start, it is good to introduce here our agenda for today. I will be discussing 3 major sections or topics for today. We would begin by looking at the nature and the dynamics of technology so that we would fully understand what is behind technology, its life cycle. And then after understanding what technology is and the usefulness of technology, we will now proceed to the meat of my talk, which is about emerging technologies. And of course, if we are introduced with this knowledge about technologies of the future, we are going to ask logically the question, what are the things that we need to prepare if I am to take part of this community of having new technologies? What are the skills, what are the knowledge that I must possess so that I will be able to partake out of this emerging technology? So we talk about the professionals and the future. So with these three sections in mind, we will now proceed and let us introduce. Allow me to go back to the basics. I'm now flashing here, presenting to you how technology is defined. I'm too sure that many of you are so engrossed and many of you are using technology, one form or the other. And of course, I'm sure that everyone has his or her mobile phone. So technology here is defined as the know-how and the process by which humans would modify nature. So we have nature, and our tendency is really to explore nature in order for us to meet our needs and wants. So every time we have like a crisis, there are opportunities because innovations are created, inventions are introduced so that those social requirements, personal requirements would be met. So typically, if you go back to history, we started with this kind of tools. Our ancient forefathers would have a very basic tool, but that is already considered as a technology. And progressing, obviously, through time, there are like technologies related to weaponry, okay? And our history is peppered with a lot of wars, battles. So we can see here a war technology. So I think this is the catapult. There's another form of that, the ballista, but that is very crude in today's standards. Okay, and then of course, in the 18th century, we have the late 18th century, we have this kind of technology where steam powers many of the technology engines. These are used for the manufacturing of many products. And here in this picture, it's good to see this kind of an antique car, first type of car. And then eventually, of course, since many of us are on information technology, the picture that we see now is the ENIAC machine. So you can see the complication of this machine. So it would occupy a lot of space, maybe one big room, just to house this equipment. And the computing capability of this would be no much compared to the mobile phones that we have. And so this is very crude, again, in today's standards. So that is the first computational machine, electronic machine. But my understanding is that there are still mechanical components being used in relation to this equipment. And then I'm not too sure if you are familiar of this another form of technology, but this is like an input mechanism. So this is like the punch card. So you cannot really interact or interface with the machine if you do not have this kind of cards. So you punch holes into these cards, and these holes would represent the instructions you are giving to the machine. So the presence of, say, a hole would indicate, say, a value of 1. So you know that machines or computers would only operate using the binary system, and the absence of the hole would indicate 0. So this type of very crude input mechanism provided people or users the capability to interact with computers. And then quite interestingly, we have this very, very old IBM compatible. So I think in the late 80s or early 80s, we have this machine. I went to UPLB, UP Los Baños, and this was the machine that I encountered during my college days. So we are, I think, fortunate to have that kind of a machine back those times. No? So the screen here, unfortunately, if we are to compare it in today's desktop monitors, it's really far, antiquated in the sense that you only have like one color there. That's the green. No? And monitors can also be black and white, and there is a progression because after this machine, you know that many other versions or types of computers came, and they have features more advanced than this. Okay, so the question now for all of us is this: why is this the case where we have see the transition from one technology to another, from the ancient technology to the modern technology that we have right now? And this is made more profound because of the fact that internet was invented. And so therefore, if we look at the numbers or statistics in January 2019, you have here a very well digitized, well-connected community of users. So this came from Hootsuite, and the data that we see here is that there are like 7.6 billion people, total population that we have right now. And out of this, the unique number of mobile users is at 11 billion. So the penetration of these users, talking about the total population, is 67%. And in 2019, there are like 4.3 billion users, and we're now talking about people using the internet globally. So I am sure that this number is already outdated because we are now talking about 2020. And in the advent of the pandemic, I'm sure many people resorted to the use of the internet or online means so that they will be able to continue their work and communicate with the rest of the community members. And then talking about social media, we have like 3.4 billion. So that is like 45%, almost half of the total population. And I'm sure that we are part of this. The Filipinos in particular are fond of using social media. So we are part of that statistics. So clearly, as you can see, the data would reflect that we are now at a time where we are fully connected, and that online communication, doing work through online means, is really done using technology. Another slide here would show us the digital growth. So we would expect that from this data, the growth of digital devices, the use of the internet would continue. So these are all like positive, talking about the digital growth. So this is like a year-on-year comparison, talking about the number of users. Internet also included here are mobile users. So definitely we have been part of this, especially now that we are using this kind of a platform so that we can continue delivering the event which we usually conduct on an annual basis, the Y4iT. Now, for the internet use, I'm sure that this data would impress upon us the realization that internet has been pervasive. It is so encompassing, and so the number keeps on growing. So that's basically the percentage of the total population, 57%. More than half of the total population in today's world are using the internet. Okay. And so again, so if we talk about the transition of one technology to another, we need to understand that we go through a life cycle. There's a process. It's like human beings, having its own life cycle. So here, the graph here is divided into 4 sections. We would expect that any technology would have its birth. So we call it the emerging stage. So that is shown here. The emerging part, the first part. So there could be like research and development activities being done so that the technology can be improved and enhanced and be prepared for eventual deployment in the market. And so after giving birth to that innovation or technology, it would go to the second phase, the growth phase. So in terms of our transition in our life, this could be our adolescence stage. It's a growing part. And then after a while, when it is introduced now to the market, it becomes mature. So many people would be using the technology. They would maximize its functionalities as well as its features. And take note that eventually, if we are given with one type of technology, a form of technology, it would eventually become obsolete. So it would now go to the fourth phase, the eventual phase, the last phase, which is the decline of the technology. But like any other form of, natural element or say an object, it will always be compared to something going through this life cycle. And right now, if you observe, there would be new S-curve coming out, giving birth to another technology. So if this would decline, the reason being is that one of the many reasons would be there's another technology that would be introduced. And after introducing the technology again, it will go through the same life cycle and then it will again be obsolete and replaced by another technology. So this is a good representation of how technology evolved through time. So that means that we really need to seize the moment, maximize the use of a technology before it becomes obsolete. Because if we just keep the technology in one of our closets or drawers, then there would come a time that we can no longer maximize its use precisely because the life cycle of that technology has declined. So a good illustration of that transition can be seen from this. I'm sure you recall one of this form of TV set. So many of us would say that we have already this TV in the year 2000. So we have this kind of a CRT tube technology, and eventually it was replaced by another technology in the 2010s. We now 2010, yes. And afterwards, we now have like the flat screens, the LED screens or monitors. And you are quite familiar that we are not only talking about basic LED TV sets, but there is a transition from this form of a technology. And now we have the so-called high definition TV set, the HD TV. And there are other technologies, the OLED. And I'm sure that there would also be, transition to newer technology. So precisely because it will go through a life cycle. And what do we expect in the coming future as inspired by movies like this? We have the Star Wars. And you can see here, I think this is Princess Leia, if I'm not mistaken. And a holographic image of the princess is being shown, and they are communicating. So who knows, we might be laughing looking at this, but the future is ripe. It is very possible that we will have this kind of technology. So films like this has inspired many inventors, manufacturers of technology, and eventually they predict that our forms will have this kind of manifestation. And this is like a holographic image arising from our mobile phones. So this is interesting. We still don't have this, but I'm quite confident that in the coming years, we will have this form of technology. You can just imagine Piolo Pascual or Liza Soberano coming alive from your phone because of technology. So it's interesting to be equipped with this kind of technology. And another technology that is very close to our hearts would be our cellular gadget or device. So in the 1980s, we have this 1G technology. So I'm sure that our grandparents, our parents, some of them, because at the time, this is a very expensive device or equipment. And take note that this device is bulky, and we will be laughing because if you carry this, it's like carrying a brick of stone, with you. So it's so heavy, and I'm sure that the battery will be dissipated as quickly as we don't expect it. And then eventually, of course, because inventors, innovators are really after that kind of a gadget, communication was very important even these days. The 2G came about. So in 1992, it was there. Nokia was very popular. I'm sure that you have heard of Nokia, a manufacturer of mobile phones. Unfortunately, they were not able to really innovate their products, and so they are no longer that popular compared to other companies like Apple or say Samsung. But that was like 2G, and then eventually the 3G technology. The 3G was characterized by the capability of phones to transmit and receive data, and not only to facilitate calls or send or receive text messages, but there's already a form of data transmission. So this is like the an ancestor of today's mobile phones, where LTE communication is facilitated. At that time, we are using the Wireless Application Protocol, WAP, the WAP. And using that protocol, you can program your phone so that you can access data on a very limited scale, and display it on your screen. And then right now, we have the 4G. And according to this slide, this was introduced in 2011. So the smartphones, I'm sure that Apple Corporation was ahead talking about 4G technology, including having the touch technology, touch screen technology. So that's the 4G. And during these days of the pandemic, we have heard of the 5G technology being deployed. And there are like a popular Chinese manufacturing who is leading the 5G revolution. So we would expect that faster communication, sending and receiving of data will be facilitated using 5G technology. So the power of our phones would be, multiplied because of this capability to receive and transmit volumes of data. So that's the 5G technology. And I'm sure eventually we hope that we will have that holographic technology on our phones. Okay, so let's go back because we have seen a lot of examples of illustrations how technology evolved from the basic form, and now we have the most advanced form of technology. So we would again ask the question, why is this so? The appetite of human beings for enhanced features changes when it comes to making their lives more convenient and easy. The reason being there is we have a transition of this type of data being converted to another form of data. So we started from gathering the parts, and from gathering the parts, there's a transition so that these parts can be connected and the analysis can be done, talking about different parts, and out of it, you can generate information. And people were not yet satisfied. We still combine many information so that we can now form a new type of data, a more enhanced data. So that is now what we call the knowledge level. So we are now forming the whole from the parts, the many parts that we collected. And so after forming this as a whole, this information, we now join many wholes, and that will now be the highest level of data, which is we call wisdom. So I'm sure you have heard of many technologies related to this level, like artificial intelligence, augmented reality. So these are all the technologies where basic data are being transformed into an advanced form or type so that machines or devices can already decide similar to what human beings can do. So the discernment whether an action is right or wrong can be processed using the data it possesses, and so a decision can be made. And all of this process is implemented using the computing device or a computer or an equipment. So from the stage of researching, we went through observing, we do it, we implement it on the basis of the information that we possess. We do interact, and then eventually, because we are given the wisdom, the level of understanding would also increase, and that's the highest level of understanding. We are given the capability to reflect. And so the goodness or, the good and the evil can be discerned out of the wisdom that we have. So with this, I'm sure that you are quite convinced that we would expect more talking about technology. That is the reason that before there is an analysis, literatures would pertain to this as the fusion of two worlds being combined together, the physical world and the digital world. But in today's time, we are, observing, we are partaking into that process where a third world is being combined, the biological world. So take note that all the things that we see and all the things that we convert into digital format, these are all processed, but we are not yet happy as human beings. So we still combine another world, which is the biological world. So this time we are now talking about, having sensors attached to our body, and our, all of these sensory emotions that we have are all processed. The way we, express our emotion is augmented through the use of digital devices. Our heartbeat is being measured through an electronic gadget. The electronic, equipment are being utilized, especially in the medical world. So we see that in that industry where many of these worlds are being fused together so that newer technologies can be introduced. So that is precisely what is being pertained to as the fourth industrial revolution. So I'm sure you have heard of this IR, the Industrial Revolution. There are series of these revolutions from the first IR to the fourth IR. So many literature scientists would refer to it as the fourth industrial revolution. So what is this fourth industrial revolution? Here we have a short definition. It is a way of describing the blurring of boundaries. So it's like you can no longer distinguish the existence, the difference between physical, digital, and biological worlds. So it's like a thing where these three entities, components are combined together. So they are seamless. So when we do our day-to-day work, one way or the other, there is like a technology augmenting whatever that we want to accomplish, the way we think. There could be decisions. So we look at our phones and we get data from our phone and processing it. Maybe our emotions can be affected. The biological nature of us, can be processed. We can be happy. We can be sad. The way we interact and receive this information. To have an understanding where we are right now, we talk about the fourth industrial revolution. We have this. So the first revolution in the 1700s, it's characterized by the steam, the use of steam. So there's like mechanization, and these were all powered by steam. So the looming machine is there. So you would also see that train system were powered using steam. And then after that, they removed this type of technology, substituted it with more advanced technology. So in the 1800s, that is now the second industrial revolution. We talk about that. So we have now the electricity. So mass production has been introduced. There's already an assembly line. And the maximization of electrical energy is was observed during those days, those years, 1800s. So that is the second industrial revolution. Okay, so if we have like steam-powered trains, they now like have the use of conventional fuel, and many of their equipment inside that machinery, they can be powered by electricity. And then they can have now they now have the third industrial revolution after the second, and it is now characterized as the computing age. So here, I think we are part of this. Many factories are powered through automation. We now have like computers, okay, and different electronic devices. So our TV sets, we have vacuum, microwaves, replacing now those transistors because we have integrated circuits. And so that's the third industrial revolution. After that, we now have the fourth IR. So this is now the fusion of the three worlds as we have described. So we now talk about cyber physical systems, artificial intelligence, IoT, etc., including the ability to edit genetic structures. And we have also heard and seen different autonomous vehicles. We now speak of having driverless cars, so that is part of this. The drones that are being used by the military and government institutions, they are leveraging on the technologies related to this fourth industrial revolution. Okay, so what do we expect? These are now we're now talking about the meat of the topic, emerging technologies. So we expect that in the coming days, even as we speak, there are many implementations of the following: virtual reality and augmented reality. We now speak of drones and many types of robots. Speakers would talk about big data, I'm sure. So data analytics would come from this. And a more advanced type of computers, we call it quantum computing. We would also expect that. So if the speed of our computer is at this level, we would see, because there are certain laws in physics, that it would increase exponentially. And so the level of the depth of processing will also be improved. And we also see here the smooth talking AI assistants. So we have like gadgets or devices who serve as our artificial intelligence assistants. So we can talk to him or her, and whatever we need, the data are provided. So there are like voice commands that you can give, and in return, you will get answers from these devices. And then quite popular nowadays are different health monitoring devices or equipment. In today's battle against the virus, COVID, I am sure that they are utilizing a lot of equipment where it can be considered as part of this emerging technologies. So internet, through the use of the internet, doctors can communicate from one hospital to another hospital, and the boundaries, talking about physical boundaries, are removed precisely because of the advances in different communication technologies. Okay, so from Gartner, which is a very popular research institution, they publish a lot of papers, studies. They have this so-called hype cycle for emerging technologies. This is very latest. So we can see here a graph. Looks like an S, similar to what we have shown a while ago. And here would be the innovation trigger. So they divided this into 5. The first stage is this innovation trigger, followed by the second stage. They call it the peak of inflated expectations. And the third stage, the throw of disillusionment. So there's like a decline. And then after this decline, it would rise a little, and we'll now go to the fourth stage, the slope of enlightenment. And it would settle here on the fifth stage. So what are interesting technologies here if we are going to dissect this hype cycle as printed, published this year, 2020? So we have these words, authenticated provenance. It's like the ownership is being established electronically and digitally. So we have like RFIDs, the biometrics becoming more sophisticated. And then when go through, you have these terms like self-supervised learning. You have like low-cost single-board computers at the edge. So we have seen, smaller computers, like it's a box of a match, and inside that, there's already a powerful processor. There would be like machine learning equipment or devices. There are terms like generative adversarial networks. So this is quite advanced, and so on with all other technologies. But quite interestingly, because of the pandemic, I'm sure a lot will be triggered, because here they include the so-called social distancing technologies. Okay. And then there could be like artificial intelligence. And then eventually you can bring our own identity wherever we want. So it's no longer like using the usual username and password. So there could be like chips embedded in our body, maybe, or in our devices, and our identities can be, recognized. So this would take the whole day discussing all of these technologies. So please allow me to focus more on three major emerging technologies. So we now talk about the power of three technologies from the authors Chandra, Bharti, and Gupta. So they now talk about three important technologies during this time, and we characterize this as the fourth industrial revolution. The first one is blockchain. The second one is the Internet of Things. And then the third one is AI. So let's take a look at blockchain. I'm sure you have heard of this. So we now talk about having a system, a network, which is very secure. It is decentralized. And there's a transparent way of recording and sharing data. So we don't have to rely on third-party intermediaries. So there's no one single repository of our data, but there's a network of maybe storage or computers, devices. And through this network of devices, we can authenticate, we can validate the records. So that is, the blockchain technology that we are hearing nowadays. And how would this blockchain be implemented? So if there is a transaction that is illustrated here, okay, bear with me, because we will just have the a simple explanation of how the blockchain technology works or operates. So if you have like a transaction that will be posted, so there would be like a broadcast of the transaction, and that is through a peer-to-peer network. And so there could be many computers involved. And in the blockchain technology, it is referred to as nodes. So there could be, hundreds of nodes, many nodes, and they would try to process the transaction. So these nodes, they would utilize algorithms, and through this, the use of blockchain algorithms, they can authenticate, validate the transaction, and that could also recognize from where the transaction came. And using that same algorithm, the transaction will be verified. So if you're talking about, paying for a certain fee, all these transactions will be carried out through this process. So a verified transaction can involve cryptocurrency. It could be like contracts, or say birth certificate or records, marriage records, these similar types of data being validated. And then, so the transactions combined, take note that there are many nodes, involved here in the process. And so once verified, it will now create a new block of data, and that data will now be stored in a ledger. So these are the common words that we would hear if we talk about blockchain technology: nodes and having the ledger. And once the data is created in this ledger, the new block is created, and so the transaction is consummated. So it's completed. So there are many applications of blockchain technology related to, say, insurance claims, maintaining health records, things like that. Even in our schools, the transcript of records or the diplomas can be authenticated using block technology. Okay, so these are the things that we would hear where to use blockchain technology. As I mentioned, birth, wedding, and death certificates. If you need to authenticate, transfer it, transmit it from one machine to another. It can be used for trade processing and settlement. So we now talk about financial technologies, fintech. So that is part of that. I mentioned about insurance, payments again. If you implement cross-border payments from one country to another, this can be done through blockchain technology. So I'm sure that at the forefront of the application of blockchain would be the banking industry. So I'm sure the banks are already exploring the use of blockchain technology. And we also mentioned about having smart documents. So these are also part of an area where blockchain technology can be deployed. Okay. And after that big group of technology, we now have AI. So these are intelligent machines reacting or working like human beings. So we can see AI being implemented related to speech recognition, machine learning, or the usual learning that we are doing right now, planning and problem solving. So that came from Technopedia. So we have seen many areas where AI has been applied, like here, doing business intelligence. There could be AI, the chatbots, e-commerce. And if we search using perhaps Google, our results can be called from the many recommendations generated by AI, created by Google or being utilized by companies like Google. And then there could also be forecasting models. So you will have AI, components or technology. Diagnostics related to healthcare, AI can still be used. If you have like image processing, I'm sure it's so heavy in AI, the use of that. You can interact with, say, a machine, and an AI is there. No? And so decisions can be made out of the results generated by the AI algorithm. As a matter of fact, right now, I am aided by Alexa. So with me is a machine, a device. This is the Alexa device from Amazon. So let me see if we can hear her. Alexa, how are you today?
Here's something I found on the web. According to Forbes.com, Alexa is who talks to users of Amazon's Echo products, including
Alexa,
the Echo,
thank
Dot,
you.
and
Alexa, can you multiply 3,980 by 7?
3,980 times 7 is 27,860.
Very good, Alexa. Thank you, Alexa. So,
Of course.
Thank you.
Enjoy the sunshine.
You see, so that is what we call AI. So here, I really maximize it by way of controlling the switches inside my house, so I can close and open my lights, the smart plugs, and so on using Alexa. So this is like a very interesting technology. You can also communicate if there are other people using the same technology. Communication can be facilitated using AI devices like Alexa. Siri is another AI from Apple. And I'm sure that Microsoft has its own. I think the name of that AI assistant is Cortana. So for those using Microsoft, okay, so these are like technologies related to artificial intelligence. And the last third group are the Internet of Things. So these are devices, very common nowadays. So you have like interconnected devices, and they are embedded in our many objects, whether at home or in the offices. And we are capable of sending and receiving data. So this definition came from Google, the Internet of Things. So these are the areas of IoT. We can use it, smart home for our smart home. The wearables, yes. So our smart watches can be connected to other devices like our phones and our appliances. You can control your microwave using your smartwatch. We can also create smart cities. So when we pay, if we are going to ride on a bus, we can also pay in a cafeteria. So we use one card, and all of these are transmitted using IoT devices. If we have like power firms, I'm sure they are maintaining now the so-called smart grids, no, related to energy generation and distribution. And then so on and so forth. I do not have to go through this because these terms are, I'm sure, quite familiar to you. And we already discussed some of this. And what is very interesting is this devices being connected to other devices. And so they can decide, because AI can be present, and you can have an augmented reality talking about data. And so you can act, you can behave, you can respond more intelligently using these devices. Okay, so according to a very famous author, Alvin Toffler, he said that technology feeds on itself. Technology makes more technology possible. So that is really true. So though we talk about three emerging technologies out of the many emerging technologies, we are quite confident that in the coming years there are still a lot of technologies that would come out, will arise, because a technology would feed other technologies. So what do we expect in the future? There would be more concern about discernment between good and evil, so the duality of technology there. Even the use of social media nowadays, I'm sure many of you are using. You can use it for doing good. At the same time, you can also use it for doing bad, evil things. Then there would be impact on businesses, security. You talk about skills, changes on the skills or improvement, and the concern about the workforce being replaced by robots. So that would be an impact on our businesses. Telecommuting is being exercised nowadays because physically we cannot report for work. E-commerce has been very, very popular. So we can get groceries, buy groceries and appliances, etc. Through Lazada, Zalora, etc. And these are all implementation of e-commerce. Okay, so that is what is stored for all of us, in the coming days. And it would also have impact on government. So government will be more challenged because they would be, people would demand for more transparency, how they would gather feedback and engage people. And they would also be challenged to be agile, the ability to be flexible so that they can respond to whatever needs the community would have. Impact on people, to us, so identity is a big issue. Our privacy, our trust, our work patterns will be part of it. Ethics would also be a concern. Our relationship to other people. Some people would, more fond of communicating via online than, right now, we cannot really do face-to-face. But there are also ethical questions like, would you still allow your workers to work even outside of the business hours? It's already 9 in the evening, and yet you are still sending instructions to your workforce. So that is part of this issues related to work patterns and ethics. Okay. So how do we respond? We would expect that many organizations would embrace technology and they would innovate, especially now that we have a crisis. We would see many companies that would future-proof their workforces in terms of getting the right set of skills and knowledge. They would train them, so you will be part of this. You can be recruited, but the likelihood of being recruited would be high if you have the necessary skills and knowledge, fully responsive to the fourth industrial revolution. And government would also be required to be diligent and fast because, policies should have to be crafted, promulgated, and implemented so that, bad things can be avoided if there are like technologies which can bring both bad and the good and the bad, okay? So professionals, if you intend to be part of the workforce, must equip, as I mentioned, the right set of skills and knowledge, and this must be suitable for the future. We must engage in lifelong learning programs. So this kind of event would give you knowledge, would really encourage you to look at the future and be prepared. We must also reinvent ourselves so that we will become like future planners. And here we are challenged to become less operational, and we must be more strategic, meaning to say we can exercise and use our thinking abilities so that we can decide on something. And processing the data, it will have to be given to devices, equipment, so that the best response can be formulated, and so our action will be guided properly. So that's the reason here that we really have, as professionals, if you are a student, you really have to be prepared and try to answer that question: what do you want to become if you are to participate in the fourth industrial revolution? Okay, so to help all of us, especially you, if you are a student, these are the many skills that the future would require. So you must have like problem solving abilities. Critical thinking should be there. You must be very creative. The way we interact with people, manage people, that would be essential in the future. How we coordinate with them would also be important. Our emotional intelligence should also be harnessed well. Yeah, many people are very good at writing, but they lack the emotional intelligence. So they are no longer aware that they are hurting other people or institutions. So you must also be concerned about that. Judgment or having decision making. Service orientation is also very important. Okay, negotiation should also be exercised because you will have to talk to many people. And last but not the least, your cognitive flexibility. So aided with many data, we must be able to respond to it. You recognize whether the value of that is really nice or good, or it would be contrary to your interest or to the interest of other people. Okay, so but bottom line here is that we have many skills to nurture if we are to prepare for the future. Okay, so let me end my talk by citing the words of Brian Tracy, who said, continuous personal and professional development is our key to the future. So we will not rest, we must not rest, we must not stop, we must continue to learn and develop our knowledge and skills. So thank you very much. These are my references. I'm sure that you will get a copy if you would request materials from the organizers. Thank you, and I'm now open to any questions arising from the many topics that I discussed today. I hope that you learned something from this presentation. Noel?
All right, thank you very much. Let me have this question first. In the rapidly emerging of high technologies, how can we introduce these to the remote places here in our country, especially those who doesn't have background on it, those who still have the traditional cultures?
That's right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. And that's a very interesting question. This will not happen overnight. Yes. Many countries went through a process, but it's good to start now. And so this is not an effort to be carried out by one individual or one institution. So this is like a concerted effort. So the schools, the universities will have its role. The government, importantly, will have its role. You will have a role. We as professors would also have our role. So everybody will have to contribute. And it's really true. It's quite a challenge because we are a developing country. So we will have to, fix a lot of things talking about our ICT infrastructure. We have to, educate our students, our community members, and there must be the right methodology. It should be aligned to our culture. So this cannot be done abruptly. So I'm sure that a lot of patience will have to be exercised if we are to really deploy all of this knowledge, these skills. But that would start from, the universities, the learning institutions, from our elementary education, basic education. They would help a lot. So we just need to, make a good orientation, preparation, so that all of these things would happen. So there's not really a single answer to that question, but hopefully I was able to give you a glimpse of what should happen if we are to maximize the use of emerging technologies. So everybody's help will be required. Noel?
All right, thank you. Okay, there are questions regarding 5G. Many health expert says that 5G technology is dangerous to health due to radiation. What do you think must do to avoid this danger in the incoming technology? Can it harm society? I just happened to view an article that says 5G implementation harm birds.
Yeah, that's right. So because it's an emerging technology, it is very common to have this kind of debates and thoughts. So we cannot really establish whether that is true or that is false unless the technology becomes mature. So that is something that we would expect. But like any other technology, they went through this. Even the TV sets before, they challenged it because they said that it emits radioactive signals or materials. But eventually they debunked that misconception, and TV sets were deployed successfully. So it is going through that process. So the deployment of technology would also require the help of psychologists, social scientists, people who are experts dealing with health. Okay, so we would see a lot of things, no, related to that. So we cannot really say if it's safe or it's not safe, but we are confident that in the coming days, finally, that technology, the 5G, will be deployed in a very safe manner. Okay, so I think that's my answer to that question.
All right, thank you. Another question, since we are on 5G technology, is there any solution para mas lumakas ang internet signal po sa mga dead zone areas? Is there any technologies used how to solve this problem? Kasi yun po ang problema po namin ngayon.
Okay, basically, the answer there is yes. When you speak of technology, for so long that we are, guided with our will, our political will, our decisiveness, I'm sure we can identify the right technology so that the internet signal can be propagated, distributed. It's just so sad because those institutions tasked to oversee these efforts are not really that active, I would say personally. But in other countries, Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia, they really look for ways on how to address this. So there are like signal repeaters. Okay, they even use like balloons. Google, I think, has that project so that they can propagate Wi-Fi internet signal. The goal really would start from reviewing what we have right now and where we want to go. So the issue of having like the big backbone, internet backbone, would really help a lot in distributing, internet to far-flung communities. So we still just have to make a good plan, explore all technologies that are available, no, and out of this, we can identify the best solution. And of course, the emotional, the social part should be recognized well because, when people would come in, they would think about their businesses. And so if there are like personal interest, you cannot really get the best solution out of the challenge that we are facing. So all of this must be taken into consideration. And let me tell you that if you implement any technology, 80% of the issues are all related to people. And only 20% would pertain to technology itself. So that is something that we need to know, not talking about how we can distribute technology in many of our rural areas. Noel?
All right. I think I just have one more question. Is AI really important for the evolution of technology if many employees are suffering from firing in their jobs and people become lazy?
Well, AI would be very necessary. And this is like one of the many conceptions. They talk about AI or any other technology, and they are fearful that that technology would replace people. That is not really true. What we need to consider is that if there is an introduction of a new technology, people must be retooled. They must be retrained so that other tasks that are still essential would be performed by the same people who will be displaced. So what I'm basically telling you is that it's just simply a matter of managing people. So if AI is there, instead of people doing the data encoding, preparations of data, etc., they can now be analyzing the AI results or the output of this, equipment or devices, AI equipment, and from there, more responsive decisions can be achieved. So really, if you are into technology, we need really to consider that fact that people can still be trained on other things. So the enhancement of their skills would be necessary as well as their knowledge. So we have seen this when you talk about librarians, and before you have the usual very classic card catalog system, and soon enough it was replaced by computerized databases. So we have not really retrenched many of our library workers, and now they are doing a more relevant work instead of merely arranging the data cards or the card catalog. So this is something that we need to look at, and I'm sure that people would still find the appropriate jobs, no, based on their skills and knowledge. Noel?
All right. Thank you very much again, Professor Paulo Faye, for giving us a presentation about the emerging technologies here in our society. All right. Okay, let me just give an announcement. So for e-certificates per session is 50 pesos. So each session is a morning or afternoon. If you attend all 6 sessions, e-certificates are free. For the payment, please contact the Secretariat at 0285839381 or 0927-348-3828 or email us at info.y4it@upsitf.org. All right. Now let's move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is an IT consultant. In his 12 years in the industry, he became an expert in the following fields: end-to-end IT solutions development, mobile application development, enterprise mobility solutions, digital transformation, enterprise architecture, and IT governance, to name a few. During his free time, he teaches the core IT courses in the University of the Philippines Information Technology Development Center. Let us all welcome Mr. Gabriel Villorente.
Hello, thank you for that introduction, Noel. Good morning to everyone who is watching this session. Okay. May I just ask from the admin of this Zoom to enable my screen share settings? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the title of my talk is about how IoT, or the Internet of Things, empowers or powers through the digital transformation, especially during this time of the pandemic or the COVID-19 pandemic. So I will be discussing 3 important matters. The first is, what is IoT, or Internet of Things? The second one, how important is digital transformation? With respect to the third that I will be discussing, which is the coronavirus disease. So with that, I would like to highlight that I am one of the senior faculty members of the UP Information Technology Development Center, and we'll go through each of these 3 topics with my talk. So first, IoT. It is actually the shortcut for Internet of Things. And this describes the interconnectedness of devices or compute devices, compute resources, to intelligent and automated systems. So there's a caveat here that they are participating via either internet protocol or other connected connection protocol, wireless or wired, okay? And they will be generating data, probably participating also in reading and sensing data. So the generation of this massive data will be used to formulate or compute for the required information, and sometimes it goes back to the IoT device again to pursue or to perform an actuation. So it's a sensor and actuator interaction with this intelligent and automated application or systems. So it was discussed earlier that there is actually an exponential or a pyramidical um, basis of how data will evolve. So we want to actually, with the presence of Internet of Things, there is a collection of massive data. We extract the information and help us to formulate knowledge and also give us guidance for the appropriate wisdom. And this was discussed earlier. So the Internet of Things here is technically just the interconnectedness of all potential devices that you want, or is having this specific ecosystem. As seen in this figure, it was drawn that the world is actually represented here with several IoT devices. So it's an electronic device. It it measures data, and also it executes electronic signals to perform, let's say, an audio, a digital video, or even switch on and on a light, or turn off and turn off a particular appliance. So these are how they are represented in terms of the figure that you see on the right. Moving forward, I was actually one of the selected Intel Internet of Things, Intel IoT Ambassador in 2015. And this was one of my favorite references when I was going around the country and evangelizing about the technology of the Internet of Things. So one of the slides that I usually present way back 5 years ago, that by year 2020, there are several um, data that you see here that they predict and will probably adopt. So there are 4 billion connected people. So the Internet of Things uses this connection infrastructure. It can be via the internet or the IP protocol. It can also be a wired communication between a specific communication protocol, for example, Bluetooth or Zigbee, or even the electrical signals in wired connections like your electricity, power over Ethernet, and the likes. Okay. And there is actually a projected $4 trillion revenue opportunity if you verge into these types of technologies. And as you see, 5 years ago, the growth of these devices connected to the internet has actually gave revenues to specific technology companies who has this type of implementation or application or this architecture. Also, within the last 5 years as well, gearing up to 2020, they perceive an increase of 25 million more apps. So these are the mobile apps that we usually download. It can be an entertainment, productivity, office tool application. And there is another interesting portion here, which in you have 25 billion additional embedded and intelligent systems. So you have the sensors being packaged as one of, as you are aware of the Moore's law, transistors can be packed in a smaller amount of space. More and more transistors exponentially can be packed in this small amount of space. Hence, you can minimize the form factor of all of your devices. And these devices can be actually be treated as something very small. It can be an augmentation for the medical industry, something that you implant, or something that you even wear. Okay, so the boom of wearables were here. And all of these opportunities actually gave rise to the opportunity of the infrastructure of where Internet of Things can actually be of big application. Now, before that, let me just talk about the second topic, which is digital transformation. And see, as seen in this figure, we have some manual or currently operations done by our businesses, and there is an ecosystem being shown here that these are all automated, and these are all being done now with a digital technology. So, loosely defined, a digital transformation is a use of a digital technology to transform business operations. And there is also one caveat here. So, you will perform digital transformation because you want to optimize a particular process or operation in your business, and hand in hand, add value to your customers. When we say adding value to your customers, you increase their customer experience by making your business closer with the touch of their fingers on their mobile device, or something that adds convenience to the customer's satisfaction and consumption on your products or services. So with that, the digital transformation here actually, as mentioned in the Gartner studies for the 2023 trends, there are some highlights on what are these digital technologies. So these are actually mentioned in the earlier talk, but I would just like to create this word cloud map from Gartner. And as you can see, the bigger pictures or the bigger words here define how important, or how the words, the verbs, and the nouns are emphasized in this vision that they see that on 2023 these trends will proliferate the industry. So you will see there hyper automation. It's actually a big word. You will see also the presence of distributed and cloud computing. You will see the usage of artificial intelligence, the blockchain technology, and of course, you have here the Internet of Things. So I would just like to highlight 2 points from this report. You can search it also from Gartner. So the report said that there is a significant rise and a high demand for, this is where it is, I would like to highlight, zero touch user interfaces. So yes, we have been gone through the days that everything is online. You can do it online. You type something, you tap something. But at this point, they are highlighting now the zero touch user interfaces. So likewise, when you saw the demonstration of Director Paulo Paje about Alexa, okay, so that's zero touch. It's all via command. So you can ask Alexa to create a shopping list for you, ask Alexa to execute a shopping list for you and perform the actual procurement from Amazon, for example, or Amazon Prime. So these are just one of those I want to highlight. And in relation to that, they have mentioned another thing. So there is what we call a trend that we want to that Gartner discovered across all industries, that the technology should be multi-experience. So what do you mean by multi-experience? So it's not any longer that people will be studying computer to become computer literate, but this time it will study how people interact, a people type of literate technologies. So meaning it's the same way as I am talking right now. Some of my compute devices are listening to me and probably processing everything that I am saying through AI. Okay, and parsing those words, they will form something or add something on my email ad or an advertisement, or probably when I am in the shopping site, I will have a recommendation because I keep on talking about such things. Okay, so there is now a presence or the concept of multi-experience through people literate technologies. They can, or technology now will understand people and not the other way around, wherein people learn the computer to become computer literate. Okay, so this will focus more on how human to machine interfaces interact. It can be via a microphone, it can be via a camera, it can be via your social media accounts listening to your tweets or to your Facebook posts, or even it can be via your TikTok videos. So these are the human to machine interfaces where you also have the rise in sensing technologies. So it can detect probably your blood sugar or probably your blood pressure. Okay. So things like this interact with how people or you as a human being uh, go through the world. Okay. So again, the use of these digital technologies is technically part of this fourth industrial revolution, what we call a digital transformation. I think it was also emphasized in the previous topics. Now I will go to the third topic, and this is somewhat a little bit, I purposefully picked this slide because it has comedy and it's a comic strip actually. But technically speaking, since we are in this topic on IoT powering through digital transformation, let's talk about how industries really did their digital transformation. Okay, I will put it in the point of view of probably some businesses here who the professionals who are attending as well, not necessarily the big companies. Okay, so who led the digital transformation of your company? We have here three choices, and it's really funny. The first choice is from your chief executive officer. Second choice is your chief technology officer. And then the third choice was actually, yes, COVID-19 did push us to do our digital transformation. And that comedy actually is currently now what's driving and accelerating the digital transformation across all industries. So here, the figure on the right is actually from the Business Insider of the USA, and it has identified specific specific industries and the what they see, what will happen. And this was captured during March of 2020. Kasagsagan po nung pandemic. Okay, actually kasagsagan pa rin up to now. But these are when the businesses really still needs to strive and move forward in offering their products and services so that they can still throttle and survive with this economy. Okay, so I will highlight a few terms that's really something that's really important to my main point. So here, because of the pandemic, coronavirus disease has driven industries' digital transformation to number one, leverage with the potential of the digital economy. So many have not yet transitioned to what we call a digital economy. And this digital economy means that you will be participating in an economy wherein financial institutions are actually democratized, meaning that you have your GCash, Paymaya already set up. Banking is at the tip of your fingertips through your mobile apps. Okay, so there is a potential here. people need not to pay in cash, okay, but use cashless transactions. So with that, we can transact and continue with our day-to-day operations even if we are on lockdown. Okay? So here, for example, in retail industry, the retail e-commerce sales account for more than a third of total retail spending by the end of 2020. So people acquiring services from the grocery applications. Okay, so they just have to pay online or pay with their wallet, e-wallet, okay, just to acquire or have their groceries delivered at home. So that's a revolution on how retail is being done. So that's just one of the examples. You have still on the estate, on manufacturing, and even in on education. As we are doing now, we are transitioning to a virtual learning type facility, okay, and in healthcare, okay. So you have the presence. Telehealth has been long and been there and going, but it was actually forced at this point that you must have the telehealth. So you're calling your doctor via a webcam, consulting, okay? So telehealth doctor visits were replaced by traditional annual physical visits, and they are seeing it by 2025, they will totally replace all of these consults, okay? So what does that mean? With the presence of the pandemic, change is definitely inevitable. There is now a requirement or the shift to the use of the digital technologies, or this technology is now suddenly a requirement. So you will see MSMEs, or small to medium enterprises, that originally before they don't really have budget for computers, or they don't have budgets for a social media specialist, the one that will post for them on Facebook page, but now they have to allot budget so that they can continue selling their products online, availing advertisements through Facebook, and probably making use and utilizing the marketplace application inside Facebook. Okay. And then third, that I want to highlight, after all of these that's happening, we are actually, I would say, paralyzed physically, but with the presence of the internet and our computers, the pandemic actually accelerated the execution of the business's long overdue plan for digital transformation. Some business will just look at those big giants. Oh, Amazon Go is performing that cashless, just take what you need and go grocery experience. But now, instead of just puddling on the idea, now they are actually thinking on how to implement these types of ideas. And these are what I call, it's a little bit long overdue. It's there, it's in one of the plans of the upper management, but it was never a priority. And now that the pandemic happened, it became priority number one. Okay. So with this, I will go to another slide wherein the pandemic gave us physical paralysis or restrictions. And I would like to highlight what are these technologies that really help us. I would just summarize it in one line. So given that we have, for our business to continue and strive with this type of protocol, they have to always keep in mind to think of their operations or their current business processes on how to conduct it with no touch, or as much as possible, low contact. So this is the number one thrust that every businesses are thinking in how to survive their operations put their products into the market, put their services into the market with no touch and low contact as much as possible. So, with the presence of these guide, I have listed here technically development of some of the countries that really arose through the pandemic situation. Okay, I'll just highlight a few. So the cashless transaction, especially in the transport sector, the contact tracing in smarter cities, the surveillance monitoring, especially during lockdowns, and then the vital health status checks on establishments' entrances. Okay. And then, of course, I have here the proliferation of new mobile applications for banking, fintech, finance technology related applications, and even in the e-commerce or the retail industries. Also, there is an eminent, okay, migration to online transactions of variously previously in-person transactions. For example, queuing for a service, queuing for a product, you will now go through a website and conduct everything, okay? So I'm sure that I have triggered some memory from you of where Philippines is doing it, and probably some ASEAN countries that are doing it due to the pandemic. I will just highlight the top four, as this top four is actually IoT based solutions. Even though the mobile app and the online transactions of everything is still considered as part of a thing participating in the Internet of Things, I would highlight more on the specific hardware device. Okay, so here you have, for the cashless transaction in the transportation sector, you have the usage of beep cards. Okay, so there are now in the Philippines, especially in Metro Manila, in EDSA to be exact, you have now buses or some buses that really serve cashless transactions, and that is through a beep ride. So if you take a step back and then assess the whole application or automation or intelligent systems here, is that you have money, you load to your beep card, so you buy that load somewhere, an institution, a third party financial institution probably, who will give credits to your beep card. You use your beep card whenever you ride the bus, and then you just tap it to the beep card connector. Okay, so this is one example. The card itself is a particular IoT based solution, and imagine if we implement this with the presence of the universal healthcare law that we have here in the country, and also use that and marry with the concept of how the gold card in China is being used, then we can really scale our services, the government services, in a different aspect. A people literal technology, it's now multi-experience. Another way is this one again, I just want to highlight that because this is the usage of an RFID, okay, which is also a part of an IoT endpoint. I'll call it endpoint, okay? So sila yung mga nasa dulo, sila yung sensors, sila rin yung receivers, or sila rin yung actuators, okay? So you have here easy trip RFID stickers, and I think most of those people who owns a vehicle now or driving vehicles now that go through SLEX and NLEX, for example, will probably need this type of facility to again reduce cash payments. Actually, there is a specific date wherein they will retire cash payments and really focus on RFID payments. So this happens when energy is a signal is actually thrown to the air, and received by the sticker, which is an energy harvesting device, and then reports back its ID, and probably in that system, that ID will be used and it will track how much loads you still have, and it will deduct the particular cash, digital cash amount when you go through that highway, okay, the expressway. So notice in digital transformation in terms of the transport sector, we have already two in our country. Now I will just take a step back and then go to how smart cities or those who have infrastructure for smart cities are doing it now. So recently I had a discussion with a friend from Singapore, and I would like to highlight the current situation. So people in Singapore, so ito yung hindi siya parang no poor ageistic ageism na type of bias, but there are people in Singapore who can't really afford a smartphone. And these are the older people. You cannot actually teach them how to type on this small phone because it's really away from their realms. Okay? So what the government did is they will give you a token. So for the people or for those who do not have smartphones, or for even the expats and the tourists who do not opt to participate their phone in the for privacy purposes in this type of surveillance. So they have the Trace Together app. It's a government funded application. It's a systematic way on how older people can be traced wherever they go. Okay, so they are also attach some QR code. So people will just enter the establishment. If they don't have a phone, they'll just tap that device. So it can be activated via a QR code. It can be activated via NFC, a near field communication technology. Okay, and also it has an RFID. Okay, so normally with the Trace Together app, if you're familiar, if you've downloaded this app via Google and via Apple, they have this application wherein they talk to one another. So one phone can detect that I am close to this other phone, meaning that we were together in a specific place. Even if we are not in contact, there is a big chance that you became close to me, maybe within 1 meter range. So we are technically now in contact. So how is this happening with the mobile? That's the mobile app solution. The IoT solution to address and cater for these elderly people was to give them this token wherein they wear it as an ID lace or put it in their pocket. And then whenever they travel around the city, they just need that token. Okay? So that's a Trace Together token. And that's how they can conduct the endpoint or the edge of this IoT computing realm on contact tracing. Okay, now I will move on to another topic. As I said, I will highlight four. I am now on my second. The third one is this one is very famous. I would like to um, give the source of this one. This one is actually from Davao. So a big shout out to all listening from the Davao City. Okay, so in Davao City, during lockdowns or in any barangay or in any city, municipality in the Philippines, there are already digital transformations happening. Okay, and one of the lockdown areas with strict quarantine, community quarantine protocols, they've made use of their public safety and security command center. And how did they make use of that? It's the plain and simple usage of their CCTVs. So ang iniiwasan noong lockdown is to avoid people crowding together. Maybe more than five, it's already a crowd. They have to send in the barangay police or the barangay tanod to diffuse this crowd and tell them you're not socially distancing. Okay? So the use of the CCTV actually measures the distances, measures the risk areas, and then the drone actually was placed to these high risk areas so that they can monitor movements of people with quarantine passes, without quarantine passes, those who are violating quarantine passes. So they want to control or want to monitor in surveillance of a particular area. And they do not need to send people there and do that 24/7. It's already handled by their command center. And what's nice here, again, I will highlight the endpoint, the usage of a CCTV and a drone that will directly report to them right away or alert them or notify them of such anomalies. The last one that I would like to highlight, and this one actually, I am proud to say that we have a prototype here in the University of the Philippines, in particular at UP-ITDC. And this is our temperature reader and a mask checker. So there is a potential for mask detection as well. So not only that they recognize your face, so facial recognition so that to monitor our attendance in the office, they monitor also the temperature. So you will know which is abnormal, which is normal, and which is feverish, and so on. So notice that the vital status or health status is actually checked here. The temperature, which is more important when we enter establishments. Another is mask checking. Okay, so the mask checking technology, a while back, we focused on facial recognition, thermal temperature monitoring or detection. Now, it has evolved. Everybody must wear a mask going to an establishment. Now, you have to have that mask checker as well. And that is a good technology. Again, the highlight here is the camera or the stereo vision and the AI or the artificial intelligence that is required to compute, detect, and recognize these particular figures or movement of people with insight of this camera. Okay, so with that, notice that there are really a lot of technologies existing nowadays, but I just highlighted those that are actually easily implementable, easily can be scaled across all local government units, maybe municipalities and barangay, and it can be really implemented or adopted to your day-to-day operations. So with that, I end my topic, and you will now become familiar on how really IoT becomes a building block of a digital transformation, especially during this time of the pandemic. Thank you and good morning.
Okay, thank you so much, Gaba, for this wonderful presentation. There are some questions. So primarily, what are your thoughts when it comes to IoT data collection and how it can affect a user's privacy? How safe is AI and IoT? Like, for example, what some people would say that if a device is smart or connected, then it is vulnerable. And you also mentioned something about the Trace Together app, because, for example, there's a particular token. How about the data collection? I mean, collected by that particular token. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Actually, there is now a big issue on the security and privacy of people who go together. So let me just give an example also. And this is not because of the pandemic. So for example, Alexa was demonstrated a while ago. But regular conversations, actually, you might really want to ask yourself, is Alexa still listening even if I'm not calling her? And with that information that they get from you, what are they doing? Okay, so it has what we call some level of intrusion and some level also of degree of privacy that we will opt to or opt not to give, but it will actually help if the government or laws are protected. With our laws have protection for these types of security and privacy issues. Easily in China, they are implementing a 360 24/7 surveillance because it's in their law, and you sort of given up some privacy on your part so that China or the government in China can readily act. Okay? So there are some drawbacks. Ano yung bagay na pwede nating i-let go at ibigay paubaya, okay, to the government for our data, but that's government. There are other big companies also. So you have to make sure that you read also the privacy policy and the security policy. And also, it now evolves into an ethical question. As I've mentioned a while ago, with the presence of what Gartner is envisioning, the multi-experience wherein you have people literate technologies, ano yung ethics nito? If you are talking to an AI, for example, will you know na ang kausap mo sa kabilang linya is actually an AI? So there should be systems in place or something in place that will tell you you're talking to a bot. You are conversing to a bot. You are tweeting against a troller who is a bot. Okay? So things like this, these are the ethical questions that we have to answer right now. And this is also where we need your help as the IT community. We have to also be activists in these types of protections that we want to enforce or get from all our users. Thank you, Noel.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you for that answer. Another question. As you have talked about Moore's law, would you still agree that it's still true today, or how about 10 years from now? With electron leaking, how can we achieve implementation of IoT and deep learning AI in the future? Traditional computing only, not using quantum computing.
Okay. So actually it will vary two ways. No? The first one, with the presence of Moore's law talks about the number of transistors that you can pack in a specific amount of area, let's say a silicon oxide, for example. With Moore's law, it discusses about the transistor technology, which is just one, switching it to one, and switching it to zero. Okay. Now, so far in our experience as the world developing in electronics, Moore's law was never diffuted. Actually, it still holds. Now, with the presence of quantum computing, for example, the game will change and it will exceed Moore's law, definitely. Another one is that's quantum computing in that realm. I will take a step back and then put it in another realm. We're just talking about silicon oxide. Now we have the presence of other chemical elements, let's say gallium arsenide, or what we call GAAs. Okay? And as we go through the periodic table, these are the two elements that we can combine together to create a microelectronic integrated circuit. Okay? So with this, we can actually also exceed again, but not as much as quantum computing, but exceed the Moore's law because we can pack smaller transistors with the specific type of element. Okay, so with this, I think 10 years from now, it will only always get better and will probably surpass Moore's law.
All right, thank you for that answer. Another question here. I have a question about the current situation of RFID stickers, especially in big bikes that constantly complaining about the inconsistencies of the detection of their RFID. What are the possible solutions to address that?
Okay, from a hardware perspective, dito ako medyo nag-aalangan sa implementation in our country, okay? Because I've designed the same system. Actually, we've adopted it from a technology in the US, and normally they put it in the windshield. Okay? Yung taas na portion, if this is your driver's seat, this is your windshield, andito siya banda sa taas, okay? And also the detector is above the car, okay? As in way above the car, maybe 6 feet in this manner, okay? And it's powerful enough that it has energy, or the wireless technology um, signal is powerful enough to detect up to 6 feet. Okay? Now, with our implementation, I'm not sure on how specifically, pero I would say baka tinipid, baka hindi kaya yung 6 feet na mataas na lalagyanan, at dahil i-deploy nila sa napakarami, and since this is just a first iteration, maybe we can try something. So, hindi tumatama. Tapos yung iba, ini-sticker nila doon sa ilaw. Okay? So notice kung gaano kababa at yung variation ng kotse sa headlights. Okay? So the variation of this, if you are an SUV, mataas yung headlights mo. Kapag kotse ka, mababa yung headlights mo. Unlike pag windshield, lahat sila naka-face up. That's it. No problem. Okay? So ito, medyo naka-face front, tapos gano'n, no? Yun yung problem. So it's in the position, I think they should study carefully also where to properly paste these stickers.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. Yeah, I think we still have a few questions. I think we have some time. What is the impact of IoT on the healthcare sector here in the Philippines? And alongside that one, related to that one, would be the impact on the job losses or maybe skills needed.
Okay. I will answer first the healthcare, and then I'll go to the impact or job losses. On the healthcare industry, so far, here in the country, our closest to an IoT is the barcode technology. Okay? I have not seen a doctorless ICU yet. Okay? In the US, or in some hospitals, actually you just need one doctor, no, sorry. I will highlight an experience with the Lung Center of the Philippines. So a friend of mine, which is a doctor in the Lung Center of the Philippines, she monitors via CCTV. Okay? What happens is there's a CCTV in front of each patient, and or a camera in front of each patient, and she only goes to that patient if they are about to have another code. Okay? Kung worst comes to worst. So medyo CCTV based, but there's a person has to monitor it 24/7. Another yung mga tipong doctorless ICU na one doctor, the whole set of ICU wing. Okay? So yun naman, medyo wala pa sa atin, but there is an existing one in the US and Italy, for example. All the doctors are in one room, in a room, and then all the ICU beds, they have monitors. Even their machines are connected to a computer, and when it codes, they will have an alarm. So that's the closest that we have in the healthcare industry. Well, of course, the healthcare also in the insurance is already way mature. But because of the pandemic, people now or doctors now are watching through the CCTV. Okay. Now, I'll answer the second point, the impact of the whole application of an IoT on becoming jobless. Okay. It was mentioned a while ago by Professor Paulo Paje, that people now, okay, with the advent of digital transformation and everything, there is what we call hyper automation, and some tasks that are I call minute jobs, operational jobs that are routinary can now be automated and be done by robots. Now, with this, you might need to climb up the ladder of the workforce chain. Okay? So kung dati, routinary yung ginagawa mo na pindot dito, pindot doon, get this paper, submit this paper somewhere, pag yung paper naging digital, kapag yung pinipindot mo lahat automated na, ano na yung next mo? Okay? What happens to you? There should still be a person monitoring, definitely. Okay? But you have to go up the value chain of that workforce. Okay? So learn everything since that will be automated. You probably will become the domain source or expert that will give to your BAs, business analysts, systems analysts, for them to design the system for you. Okay? And then after that, when that system is adopted, I'd like you to study the whole value chain of these workforce and then try to go up the ladder wherein human human touch, okay, is still necessary. So that's my advice.
All right. Thank you so much again, Mr. Gabriel Villarente, for the very informative Q&A session. So before we end our webinar for the morning session, I'd like to thank everyone who made this event possible. So again, thank you to all of the speakers, and we look forward to having you all later in the afternoon at 1 p.m. So stay safe, stay home, and stay updated. So thank you very much.
My God, my